Greetings. I'm Judy Austin from the Center of Economic Education and Entrepreneurship at the University of Delaware. Thank you all so much for your willingness to participate in this year's Teach Children to Save Week. Some of you have actually been visiting classrooms for more than 20 years. It's wonderful to have so many participants who advocate for children's financial literacy, and specifically for this program. If you presented last year, you know that the format of the book changed. Again this year, our author and illustrator, Greg Kozluck of Delaware Bankers Association, has created a new book in the comic book format. However, we've changed the format of the materials that we are giving to you, the volunteers, hopefully making lesson delivery easier. The book this year is The Great Investo and Penny and the Amazing Money Stalk. As usual, the Great Investo wants to get money as easily as possible and learns some important lessons along the way. In your materials packet, you have a copy of the lesson plan and also a volunteer guide with teaching notes already printed on it. You will not have to use Post-it notes or flip back and forth to the lesson plan. As you read the book, you or the teacher will show the pictures one frame at a time instead of a whole page at a time. Please be sure to practice reading the book before you visit your classroom. And of course, plan on having a good time when you visit. So in your packet, you have your lesson plan and some of the things that you will need to take are sorry about that. I have several things here that make me have to get straightened out. So you will have all the comic books that will be dispensed to the children after you do the lesson. And then you'll take, optionally, small gifts for the students representing your bank. So to prepare, if you'll watch this teaching video in hopes that it will give you good tips, and make sure before you start that you know whether you will be advancing the frames or whether the teacher will do that for you. So you'll be showing and reading the individual frames. I'm reading now from your lesson plan. Do not distribute the comic books or the little gifts until after you have finished presenting the lesson. And as you read the individual comic frames to the students, ask the appropriate questions as they are given on the page. So this year's book, comic book, looks like this. This is the student version, and it's a regular comic book, and you can see, a lot of frames per page. And what you will be seeing is quite different. You get a volunteer guide. And on each page of this are only 2 frames out of the comic book. So you begin to read, and which I'm going to do in just a minute, but right on the pages that you have, you will see highlighted a comment or a question if you are to ask something or explain something with that particular frame from the book. After you have introduced yourself and your bank at the very beginning, now you're going to introduce the book, The Great Investo and Penny, in The Amazing Money Stalk. And this is kind of a takeoff on Jack and the Beanstalk. So you'll see the connections as you do this. So now I'm going to switch and I'm going to read from your volunteer guide so you can see what it is that you will be seeing. Investo. Here's a book your nephew might enjoy, Jack and the Beanstalk. Jack and the Beanstalk? That's a terrible story. No magic, no money, no wizards. And one of the things you want to point out to them, and it's written right on the book, is that he is eating lots of jelly beans. And that comes into play in the story. Ha! I'm sure you could do better. I'm sure I could. Yawns. He's falling asleep. In his dream world, Investo, wake up. It's Penny saying that. Penny, why are you dressed like that? What happened to my house? Don't blame me. This is your dream. You imagined all this. I wish I imagined something nicer. So on this picture is rather an awful looking little house. And underneath, it says to you, notice their very small house that is not in good condition. Later in the story, on page 12, you'll find that it's called a hovel. And we'll come back to that when we get to page 12. If you want something nicer, you need to save more. We save in our money in this cow bank. A little different. Oh, saving takes too long. I'll swap that out in the village and get what I want in a hurry. And again, at the bottom of this page, highlighted, it says for you to ask, why didn't Investo, looking like Jack, want to save his money in the cow bank? And of course, you ask the students for an answer, and the answers could include something like, it would take too long, Investo always wants the quickest and the easiest way to get money. So going back to the story, I'd say that's a bad idea, but this is Investo's dream. He'll have to learn the hard way. So the next frame is Investo at the used cow lot. So you want to point out, look where he's ended up at the used cow lot. Get it? It's instead of saying a used car lot, it's the used cow lot. So you get the connection. So in the context, it says, saving is the slow way, pal. I'll tell you what I'll do. And he has this sleazy look on his face. So you're going to ask them, what can you notice about the salesman? He looks crafty, sly, as if he's up to something. And of course, the ads all around the used cow lot are one owner and easy payments and get what you want now. So our sleazy salesman says, I'll trade you that savings cow for this magic bean. Don't worry about saving. Just plant the bean and see what happens. So back at the hovel, and you might want to say, so what is a hovel? Just to remind them. You traded our savings for that? It's a magic bean. I'll plant it and get what I want now. I won't have to wait. Which, of course, is what Investo always wants. So Investo plants his magic bean and goes to sleep, dreaming of all the things he'll buy. The next morning, And there's the beanstalk. Yippee, it worked. I'm rich because hanging off the stalk are dollars. And Penny says, but see, look what it did to the roof. Ah, but look at those leaves, says Investo. $1 bills? And I see larger bills higher up, says Investo. These are $5 bills. I'm going up higher. Investo, be careful. So up climbed Investo, picking money as he went, until he reached the top, above the clouds. And he pops up and looks around and doesn't know where he is. But look who he runs into. You again? The same sleazy salesman. Hiya, pal. I've got some great deals for you. And this time it says Smiling Sid's store in the sky instead of the cow lot. So you're going to ask, or you're going to point out, look who's here when Investo gets to the top. And then have students observe that it's the same salesperson, but in a different location. Like this special electric hat with live fireworks. And it only costs, just what you have there. So again, you have right on the page, highlighted, that you're going to ask, what is he trying to sell this time? And it's an electric hat with live fireworks. Explain that the salesman is giving a sales pitch, which targets audiences to try to convince people to buy the product. What's that over there? Says Investo. Oh, that's Compounding Castle. As Smiling Sid is counting all the money that Investo had. Compounding Castle? Wow. Inside, look at this place. Everything's gigantic. Oh, including this giant who's picking him up by his clothes. Fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the dough of a spending one. So ask, what does dough mean in this case? And of course, it's slang for money. You took a lot of my money, says the giant. I just borrowed it. Thanks so much. You're going to ask, what does borrow mean? And it's money that must be paid back. And right on the lesson, right in front of you is your highlight. And it also gives not just your question, but possible answers that the students might come up with. And then your next frame, because remember, either you or the teacher is going through this one frame at a time. And your next frame is the word wall card that says borrow. And all of the important words that you come across will have this word wall frame as you go through. Don't thank me. I want my money back. I spent it on this hat for you. Oh, it's a silly hat and too small. I want my money. If you can't pay me all you owe, then you'll work for me until it's paid back. And in your ask area, it says, why is the giant making Investo work for him? Well, somehow Investo is going to have to earn that money to pay back what he borrowed. And that's always how borrowing works. It means that you must pay it back. My castle needs a new moat. Start digging. And you're going to ask, why is the giant making Investo work for him? And I only saw this version of it today. It has the same question twice. So we might need to cross that one out on page 34 in the book. So Investo starts digging, then sees, hey, Penny, what are you doing here? Because there's Penny again. Can anyone tell us what a moat is? And it's the waterway around the ditch around the castle, of course, to keep enemies out. I'm the housekeeper here at Compounding Castle. Great, get me out of here. You have to get yourself out. Just pay the giant what you borrowed from him, plus interest. Interest? And of course, at that point, on your notes, you're going to explain that borrowed money is called a loan. When you pay back a loan over time, if you don't pay it all back immediately, over time, it's going to accrue interest, which means that you are going to be paying extra money for the privilege of having borrowed that. Can anyone tell us what interest is? And that's the extra money that the lender charges for you to be able to borrow the money. And so next you have the interest frame of a word wall card. And Penny continues, the story says, interest is the extra money you owe when you borrow. See? And it's illustrated with just one money bag. Okay, so he has to pay the money that he borrowed plus this interest. And Investo says, well, that's not too bad. But then in the next frame, oh, now there are two money bags of interest that he owes. Hey, the interest I owe grew. Yes, that's called compounding. You pay interest on the interest. The longer you wait to pay it all off, the more you will have to pay. And so it's showing here months, months, months. Every time the interest compounds, the amount of interest he owes grows. And then you have your compound interest word wall card. So again, you're going to explain the longer it takes you to pay back a loan, the more you will owe because you have to pay interest on the interest. This is called compound interest. It's like digging a hole that gets deeper and deeper because every time that you don't pay it all off, that interest compounds. That's compounding castle. When you owe money, you work for the compounding giant. Hey, you, keep working. The giant's not very nice about all this. So Investo dug and dug, and then he noticed something odd. Hey, what's going on over there? Why is the giant being nice to those people? And he's giving them money. And it shows the giant handing out money and being very pleasant to all these people. And Penny says, when you save your money, the giant pays you interest. See, when you borrow money, you pay the giant. You work for him. When you save money, the compounding giant works for you. Fee, fi, bum, fo. You're a saver, so interest I owe. And explain. So your next word walk card is save. And explain. Saving is the opposite of borrowing. You have learned that when you borrow money, you must pay compound interest to the lender. And the longer it takes you to pay back the loan, the more interest you pay. Since saving is the opposite, when you save money in a bank, the bank will pay you interest that compounds. Interest earning interest. So then it goes on with a whole page that is an explanation in the comic form. Here's an example. You borrow $1,000, your interest rate is 20%. 1,000 borrowed, 20% interest. If you pay back $25 each month, it will take you over 5 years to pay it off. By the time you pay it all off, you will have paid $1,660 for that 1,000 that you borrowed. In other words, you're paying back the 1,000, but you will also have paid $660 in compounded interest. But instead of borrowing, say you had $1,000 to save at 10% interest. Each month, you saved another $25. At the end of 5 years, you will have $3,580. That's $2,500 you saved, and the compounding giant paid you $1,081 in interest. So let's think about that comparison a minute. In that same 5-year period that it took you to pay off what you borrowed, and you paid an extra $660 in interest, in that same 5 years, if you're saving, you will have earned an extra $1,081 in interest. And so instead of having paid off the whole loan with the interest, you now have $3,580. So explain. Interest is a percentage of the amount of money that you owe or the amount of money that you've saved. You always pay a higher interest when you borrow money than what you earn when you save. The more you save over a long period of time, the more the interest compounds. So investors thinking about this. So it's smarter to save for the things I want. It will cost me less in the long run. Right, says Penny. And you'll have the compound giant working for you. Wait, I thought this story had a goose that laid golden eggs. When you have compound interest working for you, it's even better than a silly goose. That settles it, says Investo. I'm going back home and start saving. And he kicks the giant in the foot and says, hey, you up there, I'm going to be a saver. You'll be working for me soon, big boy. Soon, but not yet. Why can't Investo go home yet? You're going to ask the students. Well, it's because he hasn't finished paying back his loan. Sorry, I just remembered I need to be someplace else. and the giant is chasing him down and says, "Come back here." And Investo is climbing down the beanstalk, and uh-oh, the giant's climbing down too. I just need to get to the bottom of this stalk and chop it down. But as Investo swings the axe, it turns out, remember, that this was just a dream. And instead of swinging an axe, what he's really doing is swinging a pillow at Penny. "Investo, what's going on? Hey." Oh. And the pillow feathers fly all over the place. "Penny, watch out. The money stalk, the giant, compounding." "Wow," says Penny, "you must have had some dream." "No, it was all true. I want the compounding giant to work for me. And I still have a magic bean. I'm going to start saving." Can you guess what the magic bean actually is? Think back to the beginning of the story. And Penny says, "I don't know about any giant. And that looks like one of your jelly beans. But I agree, you need to save and let compounding work for you." "I'll do it," says Investo. And months later, the doorbell rings and he says, "I'll get it." Oh, sorry, there was a knock on the door. And the giant is standing at the door. And he's handing this big bag to Investo. "Here's your interest. Thank you for saving, Mr. Investo, sir." And think about what he saved, because Investo's saying, "Yippee, compounding does work," because in this giant bag, it's a whole bag of jelly beans that compounded. I guess next time I should try it with money. The end. So when you're all finished, explain the different banks actually charge different amounts for interest on loans, and also pay different amounts, percentages on savings. So interest rates change very often. So that's the end of your reading the book. And then you are going to go back to your lesson plan. And here we go. The procedure at that point says, place a copy of the activity handout under the document camera, or again, the teacher will help you with this, because the activity handout looks like this. And you and the students are going to be filling in answers. So make sure that every student has a copy of activity, which has side A on one side, side B on the other side. And as you are doing it, they're going to be doing it with you. They're going to come up with answers. Optionally, the teacher can give them calculators to use, or you can use the bottom of the paper as they can use the bottom of the paper as scrap paper to figure out the missing numbers. So what's happening here, have a student or you read the top of the page. It says, setting savings goals is very important. It is much better to plan ahead and save for a goal than it is to borrow. We've just learned in the story that borrowing is going to cost you more if you don't pay it back right away. Remember that compound interest works both ways. You pay interest if you borrow. You earn interest when you save. So we're going to compare here. On side A, you want to buy a scooter that costs $100, but you want it right away. So you borrow the money. The bank says you only have to make a minimum payment every month. Minimum means you can pay just a small amount, and it's okay to do that. But remember, on the amount that you haven't paid, they're going to be charging you interest. They're going to say, you can pay back $10 a month, but they'll charge you 10% interest each month until it's all paid off. So let's see what happens. In month 1, you owe $100 because that's what you borrowed. You're going to pay back the minimum amount, which is $10, which the bank says is okay. Subtract the $10, and you now owe $90. But they're charging you 10% interest on that $90, which is $9. So $90 plus $9 is how much? $99. So even though you paid off 10 of the $100, now it's 90 plus interest, so you still owe $99. Okay, so month 2, you owe $99. You're going to pay the minimum amount that the bank says is okay. You pay $10. You now owe $89. 10% interest is $8.90. And so you now owe $97.90. So you're going to keep doing this for 10 months. And at the end of that 10 months, you still owe $84.08 once you've put in all of the missing numbers on this 10-month chart. So 10 months you've been paying off that $100, and you still owe $84. You can see what's happening with the borrowing. Well, on side B of the activity sheet, instead of borrowing money to buy the scooter, let's see what would happen if you saved $10 a month, because remember, that's what you were going to pay as your minimum payment every month for the loan. Let's say you saved that $10 every month in the bank, and that earns compound interest. So month 1, you start out with 0, but you save $10. So you now have $10. You're going to add 10% interest. So you now have $10.10. So month 2, you start out with $10.10. You save another $10, which you now have $20.10. 10% interest is 20 cents. So you now have $20.30. So you've actually saved $20 of that, but the bank has paid you 30 more cents. So you're going to do that for 10 months. And the reason that it's 10 months is because when you're saving $10 a month plus interest, by the time you get to month 10, you now have $105.68. So below that, on the saving chart, you'll save $10 a month. It will take you 10 months to save the $100, and you'll be earning a total of $5.68. You've paid $100, $10 a month for 10 months. You've paid into your savings, but the interest on that is $5.68. On the borrowing chart, which was side A, it says, now look at that chart where you borrowed the $100. You paid back $10 a month. And at the end of that same 10 months, instead of paying it all off, you still owe $84.08. If you add up the interest column on your side A with the calculator, it adds up to $84.08. So, back to your lesson plan, and it's going to tell you from this point. So that's the whole activity, okay? And back to the lesson plan, it then says, and if you're looking at your lesson plan, on number 9, it says to ask some wrap-up questions. What is interest? These are review questions. What happens when you borrow money? And that includes using a credit card. You might want to point out to them that a credit card is a form of borrowing. And then what happens when you save money? What is compound interest for both saving and for borrowing? And what would happen if you save and never spend? Well, imagine years down the line, you could actually end up being really rich. So you're going to end your session by thanking the class and the teachers and distributing any gifts that you might have brought with you. And again, I thank you very much for your participation in this program. And I always welcome your feedback, your questions, your comments. We try to make this better. We really listen to what you have to say. So thank you so much and have a good time in your classroom.